Hey there, I'm Steve, and welcome to Jamsin Entertainment. And welcome to the conversation. Just before we get started, there are many ways you can help. You can like and subscribe so you never miss a conversation. But most importantly, please share this video. Get the word out there as a community. We can talk about all things that we love. Today on Throwback Thursday, we're looking at the first Rocky movie. And for the next month and a half, we're going to be doing a segment I call Alone with Stallone. What that means is we're not only going to be looking at all the Rocky movies, but I have another box set of Stallone movies, Cobra, Demolition Man, Tango and Cash, and a few others. And like I have been doing, I'm going to split it up. Next week will be Cobra, a film I'm pretty sure came out before Rocky. Rocky, if you don't know, if you haven't seen it, actually, I won't fault you for it, because there's been so many movies that I haven't seen, still want to see. It still exceeds what I have seen. I mean, it's possible. I mean, there's people out there that haven't seen Star Wars or Star Trek, so it's possible you haven't seen Rocky. This is the underdog story. There may have been other underdog stories before this one, but Rocky is the definitive underdog story. He grows up in Philadelphia. From my knowledge, it's all shot in Philadelphia. If not, it's mostly shot in Philadelphia, and you see a lot of landmarks. You see the Spectrum, well, most of the inside. That's no longer there. You see the art museum and its steps, because you have a famous scene there where he runs up them. That is still there. Then you see one of two very famous cheesesteak places, Pat's. People ask when they learn I'm from the Philadelphia area, I'm not from the city, I'm from the suburbs, where can I get a cheesesteak? And I say, not Pat's and Geno's. They're only famous because of the rivalry between the two, that they're right across from each other. I'm pretty sure when they were filming this and shooting Pat's, they were standing on Geno's corner, but I digress. So he lives in this little crummy apartment, and it actually opens up with one fight that he's fighting this guy, Spider Rico or something like that. He only wins that fight because it's kind of a thing with this character. When he gets angry, that's when he becomes a better fighter. And most of the time, that's not necessarily true. When you get angry, no, I actually haven't been in a sanctioned fight. In the last fight I was probably like 10, so that doesn't really count. I used to do Muay Thai. I did some sparring, so I mean, that's like the closest I've ever gotten. But getting angry is not a good idea, because then your technique and skills just start to go out the window. They don't completely at the beginning, but they can, because you're not focused. You need to be focused. Somehow Rocky's the opposite of that. He's not really focused until he gets angry, and it's not like the Hulk getting angry, but I mean, that would be amazing, but this isn't that kind of movie. And the movie, you would think it's about the fight. It's really not. It's about Rocky. Maybe that's why it's the title. Not about him fighting Apollo, played by Carl Weathers. Maybe they would have titled it differently then. So because it's about Rocky, it's a bit of a slow burn, and that's not a negative. I like slower movies. You can actually sit with the characters, get to know them, see how they live, and you really get that from watching this movie. Because you also learn, yes, he's a fighter, but he's also muscle for a loan shark. Between the two of those, he has this gym that he goes to, Mick's. He's played by Burgess Meredith. And one day he goes in there and he notices his locker has been taken by someone else. And he asks Mick why. I'm kind of jumping ahead here a bit, but just before Apollo challenges Rocky, he asks Mick, why don't you ever train me? Why do you never give me a chance? And Mick says, it's because you became muscle for a loan shark. You had so much heart and so much potential, and you threw it all away. And they both get angry at each other. And they introduce Apollo just before the halfway mark, I would say. He's the champ, the boxing champ of the world at the moment. Undefeated. He's looking for a fighter. He wants a really good fight, and all these fighters that they keep on reaching out to are calling out for some reason. And calling out meaning they don't want to fight him. He's like, they're all lying. They just don't want to fight me because they don't want to be embarrassed. And there's some truth to that. I mean, it's a champ. Undefeated. I could understand why they wouldn't want to fight him, because maybe this particular challenger is at a point where they might want to retire. There's like, they're not at the top, or they're not at the bottom. They're just at a nice point where, like, yeah, I had a good career, I'd like to quit. Maybe. But Apollo wants a really good fight. And then he has the idea, why do I fight a nobody? A complete underdog. And they have a scene where they're going through these names, and I don't know if it's just fighters that are available, period, or just Philadelphia fighters, or Philly, Jersey, Delaware, New York fighters, something like that. But they come across Italian Stallion. I thought that was a name that was given to Rocky Rocky, but in an interview that the news has with Rocky, he came up with himself when he was starting out, or something like that, the Italian Stallion, and that clicks with Apollo. He even says it's like Apollo versus the Italian Stallion. It sounds like a monster movie. But they don't really focus on any of that. I mean, they kind of go back and forth between showing Rocky training and Apollo promoting, because Apollo come a businessman and a fighter, which, well, I can't really commentate on that. I have no idea. You would think it wouldn't work. You would think you would want to focus on the task at hand instead of trying to promote yourself at the same time. You would have a team to promote you, but it is a movie, and I guess there are fighters out there that kind of do both if they get to a certain level. I don't know. I'm going to stop there with the story. I don't want to get too much into the details, especially the fact that this is learning about who Rocky is. I left out quite a bit. I do recommend the movie, but I want to talk a little more about the technical side. Possibly because it's an older film. At the time, it was a smaller film. Watching more movies, you start to be able to tell when a movie has a high budget versus a low budget versus like a medium budget. I want to say this kind of had a low budget. It's written by Stallone. He probably had to pitch this to all the studios, and then MGM finally picked it up. That's what my take is. I could be wrong, could be a medium budget, but it looks like a low budget, which is fine. Low budget films can be some of the greatest films out there, and this is among those films. But because it probably didn't get as much budget, you pick up on things, like, especially during the fight, something I didn't notice, well, this is only my second time watching this, but when Apollo's fighting him, he's swearing at him, he's egging him on. You can tell that it's ADR, after dialogue recording. And there's another, I forget what Mick says. Mick says something during the fight, but you could definitely tell it wasn't said at the same moment that it was filmed. It's little stuff like that. It's really a nitpick. The rest of the film is shot beautifully. Well, looking through, I haven't watched any of the special features. I really want to now after seeing the titles for a lot of them. And I have to redo my research on this one, but it sounds like this is the first film to use Steadicam. And what that means is a person could be mobile with a camera and it won't shake. It'll be stable. And I think that's how it achieves a lot of the shots of Rocky running, especially going up the steps. You would get a lot of shakiness going up the art museum steps. Now, one problem I have with like the story aspect is that Apollo and Rocky, they go the distance together. They just kind of end the fight. They don't do the long pause of like there's a split decision, who's going to get it. They don't do any of that. Final round that looks pretty good, and then they just kind of stop. I don't remember really hearing the bell, and I like just watched this, and they just kind of, the ref just kind of splits them up, and then people start filling in the ring, and you have the announcer come in and he starts talking about it. He says it comes to a split decision, and Rocky and Apollo are being interviewed in their separate corners, and Rocky just keeps on calling out Adrian, and then you hear vaguely the announcer say, I don't know why it would wrap up like that. And maybe that's further evidence that this is a small budget film, because it's why Monty Python and the Holy Grail ends the way it does. They ran out of money, and maybe that's why Rocky ends the way it does. It ran out of money. They couldn't do the whole suspenseful ending. My theory, could be wrong, maybe it was written this way. I just think the ending could have been a bit stronger. Those are my thoughts on Rocky. If you have seen it, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I would recommend you get this out on Blu-ray. Let me watch the rest of them to see if I recommend getting the entire series on Blu-ray. If you like what you saw, like it. If you think other people like it, share it. If you really liked it, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and live your imagination.